Welcome to Integrated Wellbeing YouTube channel and podcast for people in grief and the professionals who serve them. We're here to provide education, inspiration, and practical tools for our audience by interviewing those bereaved by loss, mental health professionals, and grief specialists. Our mission at the Integrated Wellbeing Institute is to awaken the griever to their inner peace through the guidance of their body. Our guest today is Monifa Harris, voice confidence coach. Hello, Monifa.
Hi. So good to see you, Georgena. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's so good to have you here today. And Monifa's bio is going to be printed below in the notes. And I just simply want to tell you a little bit about how we met and how this podcast came to be today. So Monifa and I were on a business trip in Spain, and we happened to be assigned to one another as roommates. So when I looked her up online before arriving and found that she was a voice coach with these many certifications and credentials, I was over the moon because, as many of you know, I used to be a speech language pathologist. And in the work that I'm doing now, what I'm finding is not only what we think and what we feel in the body, but the words we say and the tone and the feeling and the energy with which we say them can make a huge difference in our path through grief as the person grieving, and for those of you who are professionals working with grieving people. So I am just thrilled today to have Monifa take us deeper into an awareness of the voice. However, as we always start on this program, I am going to invite her to talk about the significant grief that happened in her life in 2019. Now, we all know that every one of us listening, watching, and being interviewed have grief of all sorts. And these are two unique griefs that happened in the same year. So, Monifa, tell us about what happened to you. I was stunned when I heard it.
Yes. So in 2019, I wasn't feeling all that well at my Easter concert, but it took a couple months for me to have symptoms in which I went in to be seen about, and I found out, long story short, that I had cancer. This is after they removed the mass because they could not verify it while it was still inside. But it was a big experience of really that confrontation of mortality of yourself and a sense of grieving, kind of maybe even just the ease of which you lived before, not even thinking about whether you're going to live or die, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was more of the grief of just who I thought I was, right? So that was a big shift. And what was truly significant about me is what came through. That was the gift, I think, that all things have. But this especially brought through this gift of why I was really here, what was really important to me, and why I wanted to stay, kind of this understanding, which is my work now. But the other big hit that I got the same year was that my mother passed. And that one is just something you never, logically, you think it's a possibility, but you never really think you're going to lose your parent. There's no way to conceive of it until it happens, I think is the real way to say that. And it was a grief that I just had never experienced before. It was so visceral my body felt it, I think, even before I understood what was happening. And it was something that I had been dealing with because she did have Alzheimer's. And I was already grieving like the loss of mother, or that idea of mother, and all those kind of things. So it kind of, gives you time in a way. But mostly it was just unbelievable. I think that's the best way to say it. My sister and I both just couldn't find words at the time, Mm-hmm. So those are my biggest griefs. And for that one, I feel the biggest thing I learned was that for a grieving person, and especially me, that it would never make sense, and that it would never be right. And it was just part of what I lived with now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have said so many times, we can't think our way through grief. Yeah. And that's what I heard a little bit. It would never be right. I can't make it right in my mind. And what happened in your body as a result? You said my body knew before I did, or something similar to that. What was it happening in your body that really got your attention? Because your body had already been through so much with cancer.
Exactly. So, you think, well, I made it through that. I can make it through anything, right? This kind of feeling. And what happened was, we got the call from hospice, and they said, to get ready. And I was on the phone with my sister, my older sister, and we were trying to, again, logify, like, what was the right timing? What should we be looking at? And my husband was like, just do what you will be proud of yourself for doing when you look back on this, Mm-hmm. And it totally centered us. And we decided I would go out on the next flight, which is what allowed me to have a day with my mother. But as soon as I got off the phone, and I was in the process of making tea, because I like tea. But as soon as I got off the phone with my sister, my body just wanted to collapse. I almost literally fell on the floor. And I just started heaving. Like, I wasn't even really tears yet. I just kind of started heaving. And my husband grabbed me. And I don't even know how long, but I just broke down for I don't even know how long. And that's what I remember, is that even, when I was there, I was with her, I was present. And then when we lost her, it was these waves of physical grief. It was just something that would come through my body so viscerally. That's why I call it visceral, because it was body that I can't understand. Again, it's something I could figure out, but it would just be this wave of sadness, and my body would just physically just move. And sometimes I would cry, sometimes it was just this feeling. And that's why I call it more physical than anything, because it wasn't anything I could think, like you say, you can't think through.
No.
Yeah. No. And so it's just something that still happens. Sometimes I have really, just all of a sudden, my body wants, my physical body wants my mom, right?
Yes.
It's the closest thing I can explain to it, you know? And my brain understands that it's not possible. My spirit understands she's already here, but my body doesn't care about that.
Yeah. It wants that connection.
It just wants my mommy, right? So something that it's still, I can always, I know that feeling. Sometimes you can get a little, I don't know, for me, I get a little despondent, a little, it's a little bit of depression, but you don't really recognize it unless, you're incapacitated sometimes. But what I know how I know it's my grief you know, is that it becomes physical and it wants to move through. So yeah, that's something that is very true for me.
I really appreciate what you said, because you talked about your mind knowing and your spirit knowing. And so what was happening, I'm imagining, is you were navigating the ocean of emotion through your body.
Yeah, it's a very good way to say it.
Yeah, because the waves came. You didn't think, they just came. And the only way that they could come up and out was through your body.
Exactly.
So I'm so grateful to you for being you, Monifa. And the reason is that as each person chooses to watch the YouTube or listen to the podcast, they receive images and tips and tools by simply hearing deeply what the other's story. And the languaging that you've used has been amazing, and how your husband grabbed you because you collapsed. And that's the thing, is grief shatters us. Grief brought you to the floor, not even to your knees, but devastated you, put you on the floor. And it was that wanting your mommy, and he was there to hold you. Not the same by any means. And that physical contact was there for you.
Oh yeah, it made the world of difference. It really did. Yeah, to have that physical contact when the incomprehensible was happening.
Exactly. And that's what's so interesting to me, how many people say, let me know what I can do. And one of the most profound things I invite people to do is text and say, remember you wanted to know what to do? Come take a walk with me and hold my hand. Come give me a hug. You don't have to say anything, only 5 minutes of being held. But it is, the skin is the biggest organ of the body, and we need that touch.
I love that so much. Yeah, and I think it's something that we're not really kind of taught to ask for.
No.
But it is such a powerful part of our experience as humans, right? And when we can have somebody that is just physically there, right? That's the other thing. It's like, yeah, you get those messages. I remember my sister's friends like sending messages and calls and texts and all the things, and I'm so grateful. But at the same time, there's no possible way to process everything.
Sure.
And that's like, she's like, I don't even know what to ask for, my sister. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to do with it either, but they did anyways. They figured out something. They would come by, they would bring food, they would send money, and it's the little things, but all of it was so highly meaningful during that period. And it was something that blew my mind, because I didn't know if my friends would be, that responsive in such a moment of crisis, right? But they did. They were there for her, and it was beautiful.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, as a voice coach, you already had shared with us how you were on the floor heaving, and some kind of sound came out. Now, in that moment, you were not being a voice coach to yourself, I know.
No, absolutely.
And as you moved through this grieving process, I'm curious, because innately you are so intuitive and sensitive and aware. What tools did you use for yourself that you have shared with your clients as a voice coach?
Sound. So making sound. Yeah, the thing that happened innately just out of my body's reaction was that I started wailing, right? Like just wailing. You think of the wailing in the Bible, that kind
That's
of
right.
wailing. Like you don't even realize your body can make that kind of sound until the physical parts are there that just require it. And it did. It made so much sense to me all of a sudden, uh, and so I just let it happen. And then what I help people with, and what I tell people, is that I also continue to grieve my mom by remembering her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways I do that is that I sing to her whenever I feel that body grief and I'm missing her and my heart, right? It's just aching. I just start singing to her, and it's just nonsensical, not always on pitch. It's not a, song I made up. It's, there's one thing that keeps happening, but that's again, not intentional. And it's just a song, and I sing to her, Mom, I love you, Mom, I miss you, right? Mm-hmm. And I just, whatever comes up, and I just let it through. And the other piece that I have told others, especially others that are grieving, is that nature was the way I was able to sit with my grief. So
tell us more.
I don't know if anybody else has this, but like if I'm uncomfortable, I tend to want to move. My mind will distract itself. I try to find something to do. Like it becomes more distraction than experience. One of the ways that I try to kind of present and be with my feelings is the voicing. And the other way is through nature. And so I realized about a year and a half after my mom passed that I was still had so much grief. And then I realized, as I went, took a couple months really to discern what was going on.
Yes.
Was that because so much had happened that year, I didn't fully process it. Even though I had moved forward, I hadn't fully processed my grief. And I came up with actually one of my health coaches, my Ayurvedic coach. She mentioned, she's like, well, have you been out in nature and just thought of, think of your mom? And I was like, no, but that sounds like something that would work for me, So I started going to the park. I would do these daily walks, and the park is really close. And I would just sit and think of my mom, but in a way that maybe isn't like other human beings, but I felt helped by nature. I felt like I could have whatever feelings were coming up.
Yes.
So it was like this myriad of feelings, the grief part, obviously, but there's also it's like joy of remembrance and just and just being in with her and not having to be anything but a child grieving her mom, right? Like I could just be. There was no expectations, and it gave me time and space to just experience it. And I do think that was exactly what I needed. It's exactly what I needed. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you went out to the park, because what I'm remembering is this happened in 2019, and then we had 2020. So here you are in the park, I'm imagining, in 2020.
Yeah, it's funny.
All that was going on. So nature was such a sanctuary for so many of us, and to be able to take your grief into nature, knowing that nature can hold it. It's not too much for the park, for the trees or the grass or the bushes or the flowers or the birds.
Or the birds.
Yeah.
All of it is there, and it's so beautiful, like, in my opinion, how nature shows up for us. Like, there would be birds that would come through. I just felt closer. I've always felt close to trees, but I felt even closer to the trees, and they were just big papa trees, you know, they're big, beautiful trees that have been there for, I don't even know how long, but it felt so supportive in a way that's hard to explain.
It is.
But it was something that I think I had already started doing, because another part of my practice, that I share with my clients, is to sing to nature, to sing to plants, to sing to trees, all of the things, anything you find green, because they love it, and you love it. You'll love it if you try it. So again, like, being on pitch and all this, having like a real song, not required. They don't care. Sometimes it's just a single note. I'll just allow it to resonate in our fields, because trees have fields of aura too. And let it, and just be connected, be with nature, you know.
Oh, that's wonderful. I really love that. Trees have auras, and they love to be sung to, because trees give us so much. They really do. Yeah. So this really brings us to the point where, when we were talking the other day about our businesses and how we could support one another, you said something that really got my attention. And you said, I teach people how to let it go. And it was like, oh my goodness. Being able to do that is giving someone the most amazing gift. So when we say you teach people to let it go, what is it in your world? In my world, it's grief, it's resentment, it's all these things a client will bring in and say, I need to forgive so-and-so, I need to let it go. And in that case, it's resentment, it's the anger, it's the hurt of how this person has been to them and treated them. What is it for your clients? Because this has really become almost an just let it go. Excuse me, that is not something to just toss out to somebody.
No. And release doesn't even mean that you they talk about forgive and forget, this kind of thing. It's not the same. Those are two different ideas, actually.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily believe in forgetting, unless you just happen to do so.
But don't work at it.
But you can't force it. And there's nothing you're going to do to forget. But what it is, I was thinking of this, is like, I did say it. Why was I saying it? And at first I was like, well, it's an X factor. It really is whatever is in the way, right, of presence, in my opinion, like being connected and aligned in presence. And so it can be so many things. Well, what it is often with my clients is control. It's the thinking, it's the control. How I define it and how I help people find it is whatever makes it harder, whatever makes what you're doing harder. If you think it has to be there in order for everything else to get done, then that's the it. Let's drop our conceptions of what it means when that we are in control.
Mm.
Let's drop, like, our holding it together.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then I have them actually vision themselves releasing through their bodies into the earth with the breath out. And that is like literally my first step of my method, is the release of breath into the earth and that connection and that reminder that the earth is holding us up and that we don't have to hold ourselves up.
Nice. Going back again, that we're supported. We don't have to do it all. So if I got the image, I'm seeing your client standing, maybe even outside, and they exhale and feel that movement of air through their body down into the earth. Did I get it?
Yeah. So, and then my instructions to them is put their feet on the floor, on the earth, let they breathe out, think through the perineum, through their feet, into the earth, deep into the earth. So full release, all the breaths until you can't take it anymore. And then we go to S's. So now you feel muscles, right? What that does is it brings us actually into a point of vagus nerve flexing, initiation. So it actually it calms our bodies. It calms our nervous system and our bodies, and it helps us with heart cohesion. So when we do it to that, that's why I go to that extreme where we breathe all the way out, we release all the breath, and then we go to S's like a snake. And we just feel our bodies releasing the air. And what happens is that the vocal cords will close, and it activates our vagus nerve. It's really, I know like a lot of people think, oh, I just breathe, the vagus nerve will be activated, but it actually does take physical connection, and we don't know what that feels like. So the best way to find it is breath out all the way. Yeah.
So they breathe all the way out, and then the next time making the S sound. Did I get it?
So when we breathe all the way out, we're getting rid of most of the air.
Yes.
But there's still a ton of air left.
Hey,
and it's usually the stale air that we've been holding on to while we've held our breath, while we've been holding it together. It's the air that we think we need. So this is actually a very uncomfortable initiative.
It would be.
Yeah, so we're getting rid of all the breath we can as quickly as possible. And then S's is to get rid of the rests until there's no more S's. That feeling is just this deep grounding. And then the body, you'll feel the body automatically shift because it's the nervous system just reconfiguring. And so it actually gives you a sense of calm, and actually it's the first feeling or sense of confidence in my method.
That's wonderful. That's really neat, because what I heard then is by employing the S's to actually release the stale air that's in the lungs, it is a way of us giving up control.
And there's also a Qigong. I found this out afterward. Is it Qigong? Yeah, well, Tai Chi, but I think it's the Qigong area. And they have, Montauk Chia has 6 sounds, and the S's are one of them.
Wow.
And I believe it's the release of the kidneys, which is where, so a lot of us that have like anxiety, that kind of thing, it's a release in that energy button.
Well, and it's so interesting to me because knowing the metaphors of the body, the kidneys are all about releasing our urine. And so here we are when we're pissed off, excuse me, yes. Hello. What,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
where are we feeling that tightness so often in our back? And all along, you've heard me say the body tells the truth and its language is metaphor. And so, isn't it interesting how weaving what you do and know, and me really wanting to understand it and employ it, we're going deeper and deeper with this.
Yes, absolutely, because it's all there. And that's what I found. It's a lot of things that my breath and I call my breath and my voice. My breath and my voice taught me
Yes.
are the reasons why I believe in energy work now. It's the reasons why I can track energetic work now. And it really, they are teachers, and and that's what I advocate, is to let them teach you. Let your breath teach you. Let your voice teach you. It's got a lot to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know that you were a professional singer at one time. And at what point then did you realize that it was time to use all this wisdom and bring it forward to other people? Was it when you had your cancer and were recovering from that? Or was it prior to that time?
Yeah, like so many things in life, like it's one of those kind of rolling things that you don't even know life's leading you until you get to the thing.
Okay. No definitive time, Georgena.
No, there's no real, like, I know, I learned that voice was medicine after I had been in a major car accident and my back started going out.
Wow.
And it was like few and far between, but it was getting more frequent. And so it was like a quick time that my back had just gone out like the previous week, and it was going out again, and I was on the floor. It's like I don't want to move too much because I don't want to make it worse. And I was just breathing, but I hadn't heard of anything of these wonderful holistic methods at that time. But I was getting worried, and I knew that the worry wasn't helping. It was going to like cause more anxiety, and my back would not feel better from that, right?
Yes.
And so I started singing.
And
I could feel the vibration in my back, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I started just making sounds so that would shift the vibration and like felt better. I didn't know what I was doing. But when I finished, my back felt fine, and my back never went out again.
Never went out again.
Never.
Wow.
So that was my first kind of, voice does other stuff, whatever it did, it didn't, it took away that pain, and I don't have to experience it again, before I knew like anything about energy, anything about vibration, right? And like the next wake-up call was when I was auditioning for actually San Francisco Opera for the chorus. And like all the things my teachers had taught me to have my voice be heard and accepted, I wasn't willing to do it anymore. So I had this outfit I was supposed to change into because it was the right way to be seen in the audition. I had songs that I could have chosen that would be more appropriate for what they wanted in the chorus. I had a persona that I would put on to be seen as operatic, as a classical singer, as a diva, however you want to think of it. And I didn't want to put on any of it. I was like, I'm going to sing the song I feel like singing because I'm awesome. I love this outfit. I don't want to change it. And I'm tired of waiting for other people's approval about what my voice is capable of doing, right? Like, I was like, I'm over the whole situation. I have the voice that I have. It's fine, right?
Yes, it cured your back, for heaven's sake.
Exactly. So I just went in and did my thing. I sang like songs that were totally irrelevant for the chorus part, but I got their attention. And the only reason I know that is because my friend knew somebody on the audition board. But it, you know, again, like what we already knew is that they didn't want big voices for the chorus. Like they wanted blending voices for the chorus. So so that was kind of what my kind of wake up call was. And it was my stake in the ground to say, you know what, all voices are valuable. All voices are perfect. I don't care how well they appear to other people and what they're doing for others, right? And so it became this whole understanding that we often don't consider ourselves valuable until others have approved of us and we are a service to others. And I was like, that's not right. And then I recognized like kind of the imbalance and feminine aspect across the board, because I believe in the voice as a feminine function and flow. And then like its component within classical music and how it is the most organic part of the system of opera, and how it's the least paid, least respected. You don't get like permanent contracts most of the time, like all of this kind of thing. And how women are perceived next to that. Now, women are the titles for most of the operas are getting, if you're not the exact title, you're probably getting paid less than the men on the stage. And they usually have, half to a third in most operas of the work to do, right? And it was just kind of this thing across the board. And I brought it down to like how the earth itself is doing all the work. Right?
Yes.
It's not paid attention to, it's not represented in our value system. And I was like, and then I realized, this can only change when I've changed, when I've decided what I hold valuable is of value. And whether it's recognized by others, the system, the government, the whatever or not, that it is truth for me. And that's enough,
Yes.
And so that's when I started standing up for my own beliefs and my ideals and how I saw the world and the voices in it. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What happened at the audition then?
Oh, well, at the audition, they were like, oh, thank you. They asked for a three, which is always good, because if they don't like you, if they don't ask for another. And then my friend told me afterward that one of the guys on the board was really impressed with my voice and that they really liked it. But again, like he had no position to hire me for like a solo role. It was just for the chorus. But to me, that was a great, it was still super positive for me.
It was.
Yeah.
And what I love about your story, thank you for sharing this, because it was a very pivotal moment in your life, a transformative moment in your life. So as each person listening to this, whether you're a therapist, a coach, a nurse, an energy worker, a person who is in the state of raw or fragile grief, there are elements that you may employ in your life to come more into that place of presence, that place of self-awareness, that place of saying, okay, this is who I am and why I am here. And in the grief process, we navigate the ocean of emotion. Grief brings up the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves, longing to be heard and healed. And your persona said, no more, I'm out of here. The true self wants to step forward. And then the question, who am I now? And so all of those elements are there as I hear your story. So I can't thank you enough, because you said I'm no longer showing up in the right costume, singing the right songs with a timid voice so that I can get the part in the chorus. No, thank you.
Exactly.
You let it go.
Yeah, I let it go. And what's so crazy after that, by the way, is that I started getting gigs. Now that was like really the second audition I had done in California. So only 2 organizations had heard me, period. Right?
Yes.
People started calling me for jobs after that without auditions in California, which I'd been working on the East Coast. So the people that, knew I was a professional were on the East Coast.
Yes.
So that was one of the things with that release, with that representation of value for myself and the willingness to stand up for it, came the recognition from others that I was so desperate for before.
Yes.
Without having to prove myself.
You recognized yourself.
Yes,
you recognized yourself. So because you recognized yourself, then others started calling.
Yeah.
And truly, that's the way it is. So again, you've heard me say the new paradigm of grief offered by the Integrated Wellbeing Institute is you're not broken by this loss. You're broken open like a seed to grow in self-awareness and new connections. And there was the point in there today that it's like, oh, you realized who you really were.
Yeah.
So
important.
Yes, it really is. So as our time together comes to a close, I can't believe it has just flown by.
I know.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the people listening in our community?
I think mostly that last piece that you were just speaking to, that, I saw myself, right? And that I saw myself of value and not needing for others to see the same or to make it true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do believe it starts there. And I hope that you do. And if you need that time, if you need space to grieve, that's valuable.
Yes. Yes. And so we'll have your website and your email below this, but why don't you share with our audience your website and if you'd like, and even your email if you choose, so they can connect with you.
Sure. So it's monifaharris.com, so my name.com. And then my email is impactonlinevoicestudio@gmail.com. And she'll have that typed out for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took me several tries, my friend. Right. I don't know what I was thinking, but I finally got it right. So one of those things that brings you into the present moment, or you don't get the email right.
Exactly.
Oh, Monifa, this has been so rich. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your presence, and your power with our audience today. It has been such a gift to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.